The Mahanadi River is an 858-kilometer giant that carves its way right through the heart of eastern India. Its catchment area, the total region from which it collects rainfall, is a massive 1.5 lakh square kilometers. That is a staggering volume of water funneling into a single channel. Because of that immense geographical funnel, the river was incredibly violent. During the summer monsoons, the Mahanadi regularly spilled over its banks, flooded millions of acres of farmland, and drowned thousands of people trapped in the valley. But the flooding was only half the threat. When the monsoons ended, the river rapidly shrank. The same fields that were drowning in August were starving by December. The drought brought failed harvests, and with them brutal dry season famines. For 50 years leading up to independence, the state of Odisha was caught in this hydrological death spiral. The colonial British government conducted surveys, but ultimately decided that taming a river this hostile would require decades of work and billions of rupees. It was deemed too expensive and unprofitable, leaving the region to endure the cycle of flood and famine. On August 15, 1947, control of those deadly rivers finally transferred to a newly independent Indian state. But the new government inherited severe poverty, shattered infrastructure, and a population desperate for stability. Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru believed the solution to this sprawling poverty was aggressive industrialization. He famously declared that massive infrastructure projects, specifically dams, factories, and power plants, would serve as the temples of modern India. The very first of these modern temples was proposed on the Mahanadi River at a place called Hirakud. The scale was staggering. The plan required a 25.8-kilometer composite wall designed to block a peak flood discharge of 3.6 million cusecs of water. The survival of millions depended on a binary outcome. Success meant saving a population from starvation and providing the electricity needed to build an industrial economy. But failure meant a wall of water that would wipe entire downstream cities off the map. The Hirakud Dam was a strict existential test. It would prove whether the new nation actually had the logistical and technical capacity to govern, protect, and feed its own people. To build a wall across a monsoon-fed river, you first have to get the river out of your way. You have to trick it. Engineers carved massive diversion channels into the riverbanks, temporarily rerouting the Mahanadi so the actual construction site could dry out. Once the riverbed was exposed, 20,000 laborers descended on the valley. The work site was a stark contrast of eras. Modern mechanical earth movers operated alongside thousands of workers manually carrying baskets of earth on their heads. Before building up, they had to dig down. The greatest enemy of an earth dam is unseen seepage, water passing underneath the structure and eroding the foundation. To stop this, workers excavated a massive cutoff trench deep into the dry riverbed, reaching bedrock, and filled it with dense, water-blocking material. Even solid bedrock has microscopic fissures. To achieve total impermeability, engineers used high-pressure grouting, forcefully injecting liquid cement directly into the rock's natural cracks to seal the valley floor entirely. This underground preparation is entirely invisible on the finished dam, but it is the sole reason the structure survives today. The strength of a megastructure relies entirely on erasing unseen foundational weaknesses. With the foundation sealed, the wall could rise. But the main body of Hirakud is an earth dam. How exactly does a mountain built primarily out of dirt hold back billions of cubic meters of water without simply washing away? The secret is its structural anatomy, functioning like an engineered sandwich. At the center is the impervious clay core, blocking water. Flanking it are heavy shell zones providing structural weight. Finally, the outside is armored with riprap boulders, absorbing the wave's kinetic energy. Every single layer of this dirt was spread in thin lifts and then violently crushed by massive heavy rollers. Through extreme compaction and precise material selection, ordinary soil was engineered into an impenetrable artificial geological formation. But an earth dam has a fatal vulnerability. If water flows over the top, it will tear the dirt apart and collapse the entire wall. To prevent overtopping, the center of Hirakud required a massive concrete spillway. This spillway acts as the dam's precision relief valve. Engineers installed 64 enormous steel sluice gates. When the monsoon brings dangerous flood levels, these heavy gates can be raised, allowing massive volumes of water to pass safely through the concrete section without touching the vulnerable dirt walls. In 1955, the reservoir finally began to fill. Water stacked up behind the 25-kilometer wall, the sluice gates held, and inside the adjacent powerhouses, imported heavy turbines began to spin. For the first time, regulated water and newly generated electricity spilled into the valley. This mechanical success shifted the state's agricultural trajectory. Guaranteed irrigation allowed farmers to abandon high-risk monsoon gambling for reliable multi-crop harvesting. By providing both water and power, the dam established Odisha as a regional leader in rice production and heavy industry. While the water brought stability to the plains downstream, the region behind the wall underwent a total transformation. As the massive 743 square kilometer reservoir finally filled, the rising water permanently submerged everything in the valley's path. As the waters slowly rose, they swallowed centuries of regional history. Ancient temples, old-growth forests, and ancestral lands disappeared completely beneath the surface, and along with the land went the people. To create the reservoir, approximately 150,000 people across 22,000 families were systematically uprooted from their homes and forced to relocate. The government's rehabilitation plan severely underdelivered. Many indigenous and farming communities were relocated from highly fertile, river-adjacent soil to barren, unfamiliar plots. The spiritual and economic connections they had to their land were drowned, and the compensation provided fell drastically short of what was lost. Hirakud was independent India's harsh introduction to development-induced displacement. It firmly established a grim infrastructure reality. Massive national progress usually demands an immediate, permanent sacrifice from a region's most vulnerable citizens. Today, more than 65 years later, the dam faces an existential, creeping threat: siltation. The river constantly carries massive amounts of fine sediment, which hits the standing water of the reservoir and drops to the bottom, slowly reducing the amount of water the dam can actually hold. The process of dredging and removing millions of tons of trapped underwater sediment is both technically brutal and financially unfeasible. As this mud continues to accumulate, the reservoir's capacity shrinks, slowly eating away at the dam's ability to absorb the next massive flood. Yet, despite its aging infrastructure and the heavy moral price of its creation, Hirakud remains an absolute lifeline. Millions of farmers and a massive industrial sector rely completely on the water and power it distributes every single day. Hirakud remains a machine defined by a difficult trade-off. It is a vital infrastructure project built upon a history of forced displacement, a 25-kilometer wall that requires constant maintenance to continue holding the river at bay.